Julia Lazareck founded Prison The Hidden Sentence after living alongside her brother's incarceration for 15 years. And at such a low point in her life, the support she felt from merely talking to people who were going through similar challenges led her to create an empowering support system, launching Prison The Hidden Sentence blog. She joins me live from Las Vegas. Thanks for being on the show, Julia. It's nice to see you here.
You too, Matt. Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, I want to know what is the meaning. What do you mean, rather, by quote the hidden sentence?
That's a really good question, and I get asked that a lot. What people don't realize is that when a loved one, a family member, is incarcerated or taken into the prison system, whether they're in jail, whether they're in prison, whether they're on parole or probation, it affects the family. And especially when somebody's serving time, you're serving time with them. So there's millions of people walking around that have a loved one that's incarcerated, serving the sentence with them, but nobody knows about it. And that's why I call it the hidden sentence. It's the sentence that those of us serve when our loved one is serving time.
Yeah, that's very true. I guess we could start the interview off with your brother's incarceration. Briefly tell me what happened and how that affected you personally.
My brother was incarcerated for 15 years. And when it happened, my family, myself, we had never known anybody that was convicted of a crime that was incarcerated. So going through the whole process, we didn't know who to talk to. Back then, when he was arrested and through the trial, the internet wasn't prevalent. So there wasn't really a lot of places to get information. And who did you want to tell that your brother or that your family member was arrested and that they're going to court? And, is it going to be on the news? What's going to happen? So we pretty much kept it to ourselves. So again, that's part of the hidden sentence too, because we didn't tell anybody. And it was a really hard time because we didn't know what was going to happen. We went to court on that day that I'll never forget. And there's a whole lot that happened, and a lot of it's in the book, going through the process. But sitting there in the courtroom and not knowing what the jury was going to say, and finding out that if the jury found him guilty, that it would be a life sentence, was just devastating. And my parents and I were sitting there in the court, and they brought the jury in, and the lawyer had told us if it didn't take them very long to deliberate, that there was a good chance that he wouldn't be convicted. And it didn't take them a long time. They came back. We had our hopes up high, and they found him guilty. And right then and there, my brother was taken away from our family. Nobody told us where to go. Nobody told us what to do. We didn't know when we could see him again. We didn't know anything about the process or who to talk to. So it was several weeks later when we received information from my brother on the process. So we had to fill out an application, and we did that, and it takes weeks. So when somebody's taken into the prison system, it's not like you can go visit them the next day. There's a process that you have to go through, and you need to be approved. So these are all things that I talk about in my book and on the blog, of things that you need to know when something like this happens. And after we were able to see him, I'm kind of skipping ahead. We can go into more detail if you have any questions, but I'm going to give an overview of the first time that we went to visit him. And it just happened to be on Valentine's Day, which we didn't plan. And it probably wasn't a good day if you've never been through it, because the whole process of getting fingerprinted, getting set up for your first visit, and then going through the metal detector, and it was just the way that we were treated. We felt like we had done something wrong when we didn't commit any crime. We weren't convicted of anything. but we felt like we were treated like criminals when we went to see him. And it was really, really hard, especially on my parents. And then
Yeah.
walking into the visiting area and then seeing him come in his blue uniform and like shower shoes. It was just we didn't know what to expect. And then there was a wedding that day of all things, and we were like, oh my gosh, how could somebody get married, right? And now I understand it, but back then we were thought that this should be a really sad place. And what I've learned is that it's really important for the family to stay together and to visit each other. And then really it was too much for my parents, so they never went back to see him. So through the 15 years, I was the one that visited him.
And do you want to talk a little bit about how that concluded?
Yeah. Wasn't sure where to stop, but he served his 15 years in prison, and he served his life sentence because he actually contracted hepatitis C. And at the time, I didn't know that it was serious. I know he had told me about it, but I didn't realize that it was terminal. And it just happened to be a time when life got busy and I didn't see him for several months. And then my husband and I went to visit him. Through the 15 years, I did meet somebody and I did get married. So for the first probably 8 years, I visited him by myself. And then my husband would come with me, which made it a lot easier. But that last time that we went to visit him, he got rolled into the visiting area. He was in a wheelchair and he had oxygen. There was an oxygen tank hanging in the back of the wheelchair, and his stomach was protruding, and he was jaundiced, and he looked like an old man. It was like, is that my brother? It was just really shocking because he didn't tell me how sick he was, because I think he didn't want me to worry. I mean, they're still family, so even when somebody's incarcerated, they still worry about you on the outside, even though you're worrying about them on the inside. So it's reciprocal. So he didn't let me know how sick he was. And when we spent about an hour with him, because he was having trouble breathing, and we were making plans to go visit him the following week. We had spoken to the assistant warden, so we were fortunate that we had that opportunity to speak to the assistant warden, and we were going to go visit him the following week. And it was the Tuesday after the Sunday visit that the assistant warden called and told us that he had passed. So it was, I just say he served his life sentence. I don't know what his life would have been like, being in there for 30, 40 years, like you hear people and families have visit. There's people that visit every week, every month for 10, 20, 30, 40 years because they love the person that's inside, not what they did or what they were convicted of, but it's still a human being. It's still a family member. And it was after he passed that I got to look back. And that's when I realized that I was serving a hidden sentence, because when I told people that my brother had passed away, it was like people gave me sympathy, they gave me compassion, they gave me empathy, because that was something people could relate to. Because most people know somebody who had somebody who they lost, and that's something that people can talk about. So I realized that if I had spoken about it, if I had people to speak to, that I would have received the compassion and support that I needed all those years that I wasn't receiving because I didn't talk about it. I was serving a self-imposed prison because I didn't talk about it. And that's what the hidden sentence is. And that's why it's so important for us to have these conversations so that people can talk about it, so that they can live their lives. And what people don't realize is that they can enjoy their lives on the outside, because that will help them be more healthy to help their loved ones on the inside.
Yeah, and in fact, you do talk about your situation and your past a lot, and about incarceration. In fact, you were just at the International Prisoners Family Conference through a Skype conference, an online conference. And in fact, let's take a little a snippet of what you talked about during that conference.
Prison the Hidden Sentence book provides the information that anyone needs to make it through the prison journey. It prepares people for if they ever have to go through this, and it raises awareness to the effects of incarceration on families. When somebody's taken into the prison system, it's like another world that people don't think about. It's like my friend said, it's like lifting the curtain, but it's not the wizard that appears. It's a whole nother world that I think all of us here understand.
That is a very, very good point. And I want to ask you, you said it was a different world. I mean, I know what you're talking about, but people that have not been affected by incarceration, what kind of world is that? And especially with your brother, who most likely didn't get adequate medical care.
Well, it's a whole nother world because there's all of these rules and things that you have to know. So you need to, first of all, like I said earlier, fill out an application. So you need to be approved first. You can't just go. You need to be checked out, approved. Some places you need to make appointments. Sometimes you can't speak to your loved one. You can't just pick up the phone and speak to them. There's only certain times that you can speak to them, and it's usually a collect call. Some places have calling cards now, and you can, schedule times when you want to speak to your loved one. But then also, it's when you go to visit right now, it's a little difficult to because a lot of places aren't allowing visitation because COVID is going on right now. Mm-hmm. However, there's things you need to know, like what can you wear? You can go to the prison, and if the inmates there are wearing blue and you're wearing a variation, like I'm wearing blue right now, maybe it's a similar blue to what the inmates are wearing, even though it has a design, I could be denied a visit. I used to travel 3,000 miles to see my brother. Could you imagine? It's a financial burden people don't think of either, because when people are taken into prison, if they're taken into a jail, that might be someplace that's near you. Jail might be a local jail. But when somebody is taken into a prison, it could be anywhere in the state. They could be moved to another state. If they're in a federal prison, they could be anywhere in the United States. So there's a big emotional and financial burden to families that people don't think about. And what if you have to take time off of work? What do you do with your children if they can't come, or your animals? There's just so many things that people don't realize that you need to be aware of. And it's not only what to wear, but what can you bring? Something could be construed as contraband that is not allowed in that prison for some reason, and that they don't allow you to visit. There could be something called lockdown, where nobody's allowed into the prison. So you can show up there and they don't let you in. Or your loved one could be put in solitary, and there's different names for that and may not be available. So there's so many things that you're not aware of. And then the emotional burden, because you're not going to talk about it. I had a friend. We were friends for 15 years, and it wasn't until I started talking about my brother that she told me that her daughter was incarcerated. 15 years we were friends, and she never spoke about her daughter.
Really?
Well, I never spoke about my brother. So, I mean, that's what it's like, and it's hidden. It's something that people keep inside, but it's something that we should be able to speak about without stigma, without judgment, because like I said earlier, it's not the family members that were convicted. Well, and they still love the person.
Sure. Yeah. And it just seems like the family is, the family of the incarcerated is forgotten. Left behind, ignored, treated like they have committed a crime, like you talked about earlier, going into the prison, feeling like you've done something wrong, and the feelings that you go through, feeling ashamed or whatever it may be, guilty that somebody or family members in prison. That must be very difficult. So, I mean, you've given some great advice so far about, when you're going into prison and the situation in the prison or the jail. What advice can you give to others that have a loved one in prison to help them still continue their life and to push through it and to maybe even have some happy moments?
Well, it's so, so important because your loved one that's incarcerated wants you to enjoy your life and they worry about you. So if you're out there worrying about them and sitting home, I want to say being depressed, but depression is a part of it. I know when my brother was first incarcerated, I was really depressed. And there's different things that people can do. Probably resorting to drinking is not the best thing to do. Some people resort to working out or maybe eating. I used to stuff. I used to eat a lot, stuffing my feelings. So I think some of the things that you can do for yourself is first to find a support group, find support. Now there's a lot of online groups so that we can meet with people all over the United States. If there's nothing in your local area, if you have the ability to speak to a therapist, there's no shame in that because you go through the same phase as losing somebody is losing somebody. I don't want to compare it to a death. However, I want to make the comparison that you do go through the same phases where you're in grief, you're anger, you get angry at them, you'll be sad, and
Yeah.
eventually you'll come to acceptance. So it's knowing that you're going to go through all those processes. So find a support group, find safe people to speak to. Get if you can speak to a therapist. Journaling is good. In my book, Prison the Hidden Sentence, there's a whole section on things that you can do to take care of yourself. And there's that guilt. There's that guilt that is really hard to get rid of. Should I have known? Is there anything I could have done? You know, and you feel guilty, especially if you're a parent. However, there's things that happen that we need to forgive our loved one. We need to forgive ourselves. Forgiveness is really important and to move on.
It is. It is. And
Yeah,
um,
there's all my pictures.
yeah, we got some pictures up here. And let's talk about your book a little bit more. Let's go back to the book. And it's called Prison, the Hidden Sentence. What
Yeah.
will readers take away from this amazing book? Great reviews, by the way, on Amazon.
Well, thank you. Yes, you can get it on Amazon. I wrote it because I felt it was so important that people needed something that they could go to. It's more like I call it a primer, but it's really informational. Where what do you do when somebody gets arrested? What do you do? What's it like going to court? What's it like visiting? And there's my story in there. There's other stories of other people and what they've gone through. And at the end of each chapter, there's a list of things to know. Like one of the things that I talk to people about is a power of attorney. When somebody's incarcerated, they become a ward of the state or the ward of whatever jurisdiction they're in. However, if you have a power of attorney, then you have permission to get more information. It doesn't mean that anybody from the prison is going to call you up and tell you what's going on with your loved one, but you have the right to call. Even without the power of attorney, you have the right to call to get information. However, there's a power of attorney, and each state has different legal documents that when somebody's incarcerated, they can get that information from the law library of what they
That's
need.
good. That's
So
good.
it's got all kinds of good information, how to prepare, how when you go to visit, if you're driving, to bring extra clothes with you,
Mm-hmm.
because maybe what you're wearing one week will not be appropriate the next week. So, I mean, it's all these little things that you don't know about unless you're there. And that's what I meant about a whole nother world,
It
right?
is.
It's things that who
Oh
would
yeah.
think about this stuff?
It is a whole new world, and as you know, I've been infected by incarceration. I have been incarcerated myself, and this is why I really wanted you to be on the show and talk about this topic on the real show. My dad has been incarcerated, and the guilt I felt being incarcerated. So I'm kind of flipping it around now from the person that's been convicted. The stress and the emotional issues that I caused my family was, I still carry that guilt on what I put them through. But like ourselves, we've been affected by incarceration. But let's say people don't even think about prison. They've never had anyone that they know that has been in prison. How can we get those people interested in like prison reform? What would you think?
Well, people don't realize that with over 7 million people in the prison system, and those are people in jails and prison, on parole, probation, there's millions of other people that are affected. And people may not think that their families, that their communities, that their work is affected, but it is. It's people that you know every day that are affected. So by raising awareness and by people understanding that there's people in their circle that are affected that aren't talking about it, that by understanding it, by showing compassion, that they're going to help the people around them, their friends, their community, lead better lives. And also by keeping the prison family together, that means the family, the people on the outside, the person on the inside, by keeping them together and healthy, it also reduces recidivism. So by having less incarcerated people, we can have a healthier society. We can have more people that are contributing to society. And I think one of the things that comes up a lot, even though the United States only has 5% of the world population, we have 25% of the incarcerated population. We're incarcerating when we could be rehabilitating, and it will save taxpayers money.
It makes me really frustrated. In fact, let's show that graphic here just one more time. It's kind of small, but the main text you want to read is how this directly impacts millions of people. We've got approximately 2.3 million people incarcerated right now, today, in prison or jail. And then we move up, formerly incarcerated, 4.9 million. Ever convicted of a felony, 19 million. Have a criminal record. This is within the United States, according to the Prison Policy Initiative. 77 million have a criminal record. And have an immediate family who have ever been in prison or jail. 113 million adults in this country. We should be talking about this a lot more. There's millions and millions. We're not talking hundreds of thousands. We're talking millions that have been affected. And it's not that we're not talking about it. A lot of organizations are doing a lot of great things like yours, but it just seems like nothing is happening. I don't know if you've been looking at the latest statistics, but I have noticed the slight decline since about 2016 in the population, in the prison and jail population, which is a great sign. But we are still way, way ahead of every country on the planet, which is very frustrating to me.
It is. And, I don't have the exact numbers, but his prison policy has the numbers of the number of people incarcerated for drugs. And instead of rehabilitating people that have addictions, we're throwing them in prison. And not even talk about mental illness, that officers, there is some training going on, but a lot of officers aren't trained to handle somebody that's having a episode. And there's a lot of people that are incarcerated that have mental illness. And the other thing to think about is all the children. There's 5 million children that have an incarcerated parent. And that's I've seen statistics, 1 in 14 children have or had an incarcerated parent. So it's really important that we raise awareness, that people are aware of it, especially in the schools, too, that they can identify children. There's some programs in some states where the children can get together, but we want to make sure that the children don't feel the guilt, that they can forgiveness, like you were talking about, that you're still feeling guilt. Forgiveness for people on the inside, on the outside, for returning citizens, and for the children, because we don't want the children to follow in a family member's footsteps. They say children of incarcerated parent are twice as likely to offend. And if we can catch the children early, there's wonderful groups out there that are working with children. I just went to another conference, and it was children of incarcerated parents that Arizona State University does. It was a wonderful conference. I got to be on a panel there, and just the groups that are out there working with children and helping them. So, you got to look at the whole thing. It's not just the person that's incarcerated, and it's not just the parents or the spouse. It's also the children. It's also the family members. It's the friends. It's really all through society, and people just turn the other eye because they don't know it. But then there's some communities where people are very aware of it, and and it's very common. And that's where a lot of issues come in too, because somebody looks a certain way that they might be picked up more or arrested, or people that don't have the funds if they're arrested and they can't pay bail.
Sure.
So they're brought into jail, right? And they can't pay bail, so they're in there for a few days or whatever. They might lose their children, they might lose their job, they might lose their apartment, and it just keeps going. So
And
there's groups that are working
sure.
on it.
And the
Yeah.
feeling of, I mean, I felt it when I was incarcerated that your family, my friends couldn't do anything. I mean, they could support me, don't get me wrong, which they did, but they couldn't like save me from the prison system. There was no way out. And that is, that's a scary situation. And on the family affected, they, that have a loved one in prison, they feel hopeless. Like, what can I do? What can I do? But you can help. You can visit. You can write. You can support them, and that definitely helps. Let's get back to your book here real fast. Where can people find the book, first of all?
It's on Amazon, and
Amazon.
it's yep on Amazon. Prison: The Hidden Sentence is on Amazon. It's got my logo. I love
Oh,
my logo. It's a heart
let me go back to you
because
there.
we
You're holding it
love
up.
we love. What's that?
I wanted to go back to your shot because you're holding up your awesome book. So there you go.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the logo because the heart shows that our loved one, our love for our person, that's behind the bars, and you can see the bars,
Hmm.
and then the hands that are together at the bottom, showing that we are supporting each other, and then the rising sun is hope because they're going to come home someday. And you asked about awareness and why people, why people should be concerned maybe, or how do we raise awareness. But people are coming back, returning citizens are coming back to the community. So we want them to be healthy, we want them to be whole, and we want them to have their family support. People that have their family support are more likely to be productive citizens and not not have recidivism. Not,
Hmm.
I don't know what the singular is for that, but to lead a good life. And one of the things against them, which I know you're aware of, is that once you do have a record, that it is sometimes hard to find a job, and that's why it's again important for the family to support that person, to help them to get out there, to give them the support they need. Because I know here in Las Vegas, we have several programs for returning citizens and to teach them trades and different things. So that there's a lot of good things, and I keep saying that, a lot of good things.
Hmm.
So things like this, people that are listening to this that maybe don't have anybody that's been incarcerated, this is going to raise their awareness, and they're going to think twice when they go into the office. Like, well, Joe's been a little sad lately, or the first Monday of every month, Mary's been a little quiet. Maybe that's the weekend that she goes to visit her husband, you
Hmm.
know? And, and it's just things that people can have a little bit more empathy for each other. We've got to close the empathy gap so people can understand each other better and support each other.
Yeah, and you mentioned the empathy gap. That is a great term. I know that Carolyn from the International
Mm-hmm.
Prisoners Family Conference really focuses on that, which is great. The empathy, the compassion for people in prison, people, the family members of the incarcerated. So that's awesome. I want to get your book. I have not had a chance to read it, but I do want to get it, and I hope a lot of people order this book and can get some
It's
great
an easy
ideas.
read.
It's an easy
Yeah,
read. That's good.
yeah, it's not like um, it's not deep. I guess
Mhm.
it's really informational. I just when I went through it, I was just really pleased with it because it had all the information. I thought all the information that I wish I had,
Mhm.
that's in here, and I just wanted to help people. And a
That's
portion
awesome.
of the sales do go to a local nonprofit here that provides support to people who have loved ones that are incarcerated.
Oh,
It's
that's
called,
awesome.
I'll just say, yeah, it goes to Friends and Family of Incarcerated Persons. It's a 20-year-old support group where people who have loved ones that are incarcerated can come together and speak to others and be in a safe, compassionate, non-judgmental group.
Oh, that's amazing. You do some awesome work. And I guess kind of my mission in life, I feel, because of my media background, is to get this information out to people and show other people what other people are doing. And the real show is not necessarily about incarceration, but at least in this show, that people who have been incarcerated can still do good things in life, and they can move on and survive.
Yeah, and that's why we got to support each other.
Definitely.
I mean, it's a lot of times, and it just goes back to what when you love somebody, you might not love what they did, or if you have a friend, you might not like what they did.
Mm-hmm.
However, you still love them, you still like them, you still support them, and that's what's important, is to see people as people. And if I could just digress just for a second, I actually years ago, I worked for a company and we did law enforcement software, and we worked on booking software. So I spent time going into the jail, working with the booking officer if they were having problems with the software. And I didn't see the people that were coming in and being booked, or when I was walking through the jail, I didn't really see them as people. So I get it. If it didn't happen to you, they're just people out there that did something, and maybe they should be there, or they deserve to be, whatever. But we need to see them as people. And I go back to thinking of those days when I would go in there and not see people as people. And it just really, this just opened my eyes. And it's unfortunate that it happened to my family. It's unfortunate it happened to my brother. However, I can see now how important it is that we humanize people no matter where they are. So I'm hoping that this conversation, that this book will open people's eyes and will humanize people so that we can treat each other better and not stigmatize the families. And there's families that where people won't let their children play with other children because maybe a family member is incarcerated. So now the children are stigmatized. And so that's the kind of stuff that we want to stop.
Yeah, I've heard about that when it comes to religion. Hey, you can't play with Bobby over there. He's Catholic, but I've never heard of that extreme, what you just mentioned. That is sad. It's really sad.
For the children, and yeah.
Okay, so people can go on Amazon and search for Prison, the Hidden Sentence and find your book. Also, I want you to, if you can, mention your website. How can people find you about your organization?
It's all Prison, the Hidden Sentence. PrisonTheHiddenSentence.com. Prison, the Hidden Sentence podcast. Prison, the Hidden Sentence book. I just think that, like, telling people that prison is a hidden sentence for people on the outside is what it is. It's what it was to me, and it's to what it is to other people. It's on my site, on the blog, like you said. So Prison, the Hidden Sentence. You just look up Hidden Sentence on Twitter and Facebook. It's Hidden Sentence.
Okay.
And we all have a hidden sentence. This just happened to be mine.
Yeah. I'm sorry you had to go through that. Thank you, Julia, for being on The Real Show. Anything else you want to mention before we move on?
No, I just want to thank you for helping us get the word out, for being able to talk to people. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach out through Prison, the Hidden Sentence. I know we've been saying that a lot, but it really is. It's a hidden sentence for families on the outside, and just to be more aware and more empathetic when you hear of somebody, because even people that have a child and you see them on the news, right, that they were convicted of something, the first thing you think is, oh, that's horrible. I can't believe that Joe's wife did that, right?
Yeah.
Or whoever. And to maybe stop and think that they didn't, you don't know if they did it or not. but to have some compassion for the family and not to ostracize them, not to step back, that you can talk to them and tell them that you're here to support them. What can I do for you? And that will go a
Yeah.
long way.
Yeah, and I was talking to my dad recently, and this goes for both the families and the people that have been incarcerated. Is I feel like me personally, and maybe my family as well, is I feel like I'm going through this social punishment. I went through pretrial, I went through prison, I went through probation, and now the sex offender registry, and now I feel like I'm in the social punishment. But that could be for a whole different topic. We can go on and on about that. We don't have to do that right now. I just wanted to make that point that it seems like
Yeah.
the stigma never ends, which is unfortunate. But anyway, thank you again, Julia. The book is called Prison, the Hidden Sentence. You can find it on Amazon, as we just talked about, and you have many other things going on. Just search for Prison, the Hidden Sentence, and you'll find a lot of good stuff. Julia, thank you again, and have a great afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.